Hey, everybody. I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the Word. And today, that word is win. Win. Now, if you go through Mark 13, you'll notice there's a whole lot of timing questions. But as I told you yesterday, we're going to be talking about giving this week, or kind of have that theme of giving. And you might be wondering, well, what exactly is giving right here? Well, as much as yesterday we looked at the lady who gave two mites and she gave all that she had. And then, as we know, we're drawing near to the end of this gospel. So we know that Jesus is going to give up his whole life, he's going to lay it all down. But we know that the enemy is also at work. And let's be mindful that the enemy is giving a lot of things that are not positive things at all. You'll see here in this chapter, it's a lot of things. We're going to look at kind of the beginning of the chapter today, but I do encourage you to read through the whole thing as always. You say they were wondering, Jesus, when is all this going to take place? And he gives them some timelines on a few things. But let's check out verses 3 through 8 first in Mark chapter 13. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things be?" And this is after, let me just say, this is after he's talking about the destruction of the temple a few verses earlier. He says, and what will be the sign? What will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled? And Jesus answering them began to say, "Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and will deceive many. But when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled, for such things must happen, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows." Now, if you continue to read on, you will see that he goes into a little bit more detail, even giving them notice that there's coming a time, that same abomination of desolation that Daniel talked about in his book, that we find out exactly the kind of a timeline of things that were going to happen during the tribulation. Now, they wanted to know when all this was going to take place, but we know, as you go on later, the next thing in our prophetic calendar is the rapture. So the rapture will be the first sign of those things, but then especially, when is Jesus going to return? So as you go through, you'll see that by the end of this, to say after all these things, then Jesus will come forth. So that will be his second coming. Right? We have the rapture, we go to him. The second coming is he comes back to earth. Now, you think about that, and again, I encourage you to read all of it. You say, okay, well, what does that have to do with giving? Well, the point that I would like to make today is that Satan will give all kinds of things. See, you hear, as he talks about, well, you hear wars and rumors of wars, and you may think that's it, but hey, that's not it. But did you catch the part before that? He said there's going to be some that are going to come and say, "Hey, I'm here." There's some that are going to say, "Hey, I'm Jesus, I'm returning." And he says they are liars. So what he's saying is, basically, if all of these other things have not happened, then there's no reason to look for Jesus to come. He's letting them know, look, there's going to be people that are going to come and try to confuse you. And it was a message to us as well, to let us know that we don't need to be confused about those who'll say, "Hey," I remember even when I was growing up, just Y2K, right? That was going to be the thing that was going to shut everything down. Well, if they thought that was going to be the end of the earth that day, then guess what? I kind of had already marked it off. Hey, if they said that was when it was going to happen, that's when Jesus was going to return. You read later on in this chapter, he says, "No man knows the hour or the day, not even the angels in heaven. Only the Father knows." I think that's interesting in itself, that only the Father knows when he's going to give Jesus that direction to go back to her. Now, that's a subject for another time, just in itself. The whole thing is that Satan will continue to confuse anybody, not just God's people. Go through, he will try to confuse and even disrupt the elect if it were possible, it says. See, Satan is the author of confusion. We also know elsewhere in Scripture that we find that Satan is not only a liar, but he's the father of lies. He's walking around seeking whom he may devour. Not that he may nibble at, not that he may disrupt. He is seeking whom he may devour. So today, as we're talking about giving, let's remember what the enemy is giving. And yet, we want to do so much for him. I mean, let's be honest. How many times would we hear the same words that Peter heard? Get thee behind me, Satan. How often are we doing work for the enemy instead of work for the Lord? And yet, what do we get in return? A bunch of lies. See, Satan is like a fisherman on that kind of that thought. That he kind of dangles out that bait, you take it, and by the time you've taken a bite of it, you don't realize the hook is already set and he's already got you caught. Today, let's realize that only good things, all good things come from God, right? Only good things come from him. Even when he's allowing us to be tested and tried, those things are still ultimately good because they are working for his purposes. That's Romans 8:28. Go back to Genesis. What did Joseph say? He said, hey, brothers, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That's the God who is giving us all. It's the God who is getting ready to lay down his son, the son that is going to lay down his life for us, not the one that's coming to seek and devour us. So if you have to choose whom you will serve, would you serve the one that wants to devour you? Or would you serve the one who would give his all? Don't believe the lies of the enemy. Trust in the Lord today. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.